On August 15th, 2007, former NBA referee Tim Donaghy pleads guilty to 2 federal charges related to betting and fixing NBA games while he was an NBA ref, and is sentenced to 15 months in a federal prison, ruining his career and reputation, and having the NBA having to work on fixing their own reputation. Today we're going to dive into what all happened in this scandal on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history every day. And today's trivia question is, what NBA player actually threatened Tim Donaghy personally while Tim Donaghy was an NBA ref? Now, we've had a couple episodes on gambling. We had one about the legalizing of sports gambling recently that has seen a huge financial boom. And we also have had a couple of scandals in the NCAA and in hockey about possible fixing games. But we haven't had one about a referee who holds control in the game even more so than some players. As a referee in basketball can control how many fouls are called, how the flow of the game runs with the way they call the game. But luckily, at least there has been very many referees caught doing anything scandalous like Tim Donaghy did in accepting money for reffing games. It often shows that there is control, and usually we have to put even more retroactively than proactively. And that's how sports has always been run. We always are retroactive rather than proactive. But how did Tim Donaghy end up in this situation? Well, born in Philly, he went to Cardinal O'Hare High School in the Philadelphia area, and interestingly enough, 3 other NBA referees that came from that high school, making it a very fertile high school referee location. Now, to become a referee, it's very similar to how athletes become pro athletes. So you start at the lower level. So an athlete starts in Little League. Well, usually a ref will start in Little League. Then they move on to, middle school, high school, college, and then if they're lucky, they go on to NBA. And that's exactly what Tim Donaghy did. He started, but he had a leg up as his father was an NCAA ref previously. So after he went to Villanova and graduated with a degree in sales and marketing, but after he begins to start becoming a referee in high school, following in his father's footsteps. And he does this for about 5 years. And then he moves to college, and he does this for about 7 years, being a referee in college, eventually working his way up to the NBA where he gets his shot in 1994. And he's given the uniform number of 21. And yes, referees also have numbers. If you ever watch a NBA game, they have numbers on their back of their jerseys. This is one so that they can see who the ref is when they review tapes. If you didn't know, the referees are often graded on how they ref a game. This is to help control fixing, but also just to review a referee, see if they're doing good, if they're doing bad, things they need to work on, things to get better on, and who actually goes on to ref in the playoffs, ref the NBA Finals, on the biggest stage, the biggest moments. And this is important because you also get bonuses as a referee for reffing in the playoffs and in the NBA Finals, just like a player does. And when he started in 1994, an NBA ref made a really good salary of about $90,000. And it has gone up to now being somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000, depending on your years of service and, are you reffing in those larger games. So it was a great gig to have. It's a challenging one, just as it is for an NBA player. You're traveling to different locations, so you're being away from your family. And often you're not well liked, not by fans at least. Some of them have pretty good relationships with the coaches and players, but that doesn't mean that there's no conflict. In 2003, after Tim Donaghy reffed a game in Portland, Rasheed Wallace, a Portland Trailblazer player, actually went into the tunnel and verbally threatened Tim Donaghy to his face, something that very rarely is ever done. And if you know Rasheed Wallace, who holds the record for the most technical fouls ever by an NBA player, so Wallace doing this is normal, but it still was a major factor in this. And over his Tim Donaghy's career, he was actually graded out as a pretty good referee. He didn't show obvious signs of having issues and wouldn't actually be thought of as someone that was bad. But everything started to come down on July 20th, 2007, when it was reported in the New York Post that the FBI was investigating an NBA referee for betting on games to control the point spread. Now, if you don't know, NBA referees are given a code of ethics. They're not allowed to gamble on any NBA events. At this time, that was the case. Now, they've given even stricter policies now, but at the time, they couldn't gamble on any NBA events for any level. But that doesn't mean there wasn't gambling going on. And many NBA refs were opposed to gambling, but a lot of them would go to casinos and gamble blackjack and things like that. But the reason why this thing is in there is because they want the games to be fair. And why it's an FBI case is because gambling needs to be fair. Because if someone has inside information, as in the stock market, if you have inside information that's illegal, it's also illegal in sports. So if a player, shaves points, meaning they're making sure they're not scoring above a point spread, then that is illegal because they have inside information. The referee, that says kind of the same thing. They can kind of shave the points a little bit, make the end of the game go one way or another by calling fouls here and there. But it was revealed that the investigation saw Donaghy placing bets in 2005 all the way to 2007. And he did so with two other people placing bets. And the way it worked was there was a middleman in the situation who was an old friend of Donaghy who came to Donaghy with the option to make a little bit of money, as he had a friend in sports gambling that he could give him advice on games, and he could get that information to his friend that could place the bets for them, and they would all get a little bit of money from it. That's the basics of it. And the way he would do this is he would call his friend, the middleman, and talk about one of his brothers, one that lived in the Philadelphia area where they grew up, and one that lived away from the Philadelphia area. And depending on which one he mentioned, that was where the bet should go. And that way, he wasn't actually saying which one in this descriptive. So if anyone happened to be listening, they wouldn't catch on to exactly what he was doing. And in doing this, for every pick he got right, he would receive $2,000. But as they kept going good, he would receive up to $5,000. And in total, he received somewhere around $300,000, which is a lot of money, but he was also making good money, close to $100,000 to $200,000 a year towards the end. Now, you may think, how exactly was he fixing these games? And Donaghy himself says he wasn't actually fixing the games, and a lot of the games he would bet on would be games he wouldn't actually referee. But what he would do is he would hear inside information. This player is injured, or this player is going through a divorce. This referee doesn't like this guy, or, different things like this that are really inside information that, the public doesn't actually have this information, but he did, being in the inner circle of the NBA. And NBA referees, deal with players, deal with coaches. They know this information. They know, hey, this player is not going to play. We haven't announced that yet because that way they are accustomed to, who they're going to referee, and, giving the referees the most information they can have a better outcome for their game. But they later learned that this went back all the way to 2003. And Donaghy had been involved in some big moments. He was involved in the Malice at the Palace. So in 2007, the FBI was working on another criminal investigation. And they stumbled upon this case as they were looking into another organized crime investigation. And through wiretaps, they were able to hear conversations and stories about this as it kept happening more and more. And they finally narrowed it down to Tim Donaghy, and they had him arrested. And on August 15, 2007, Tim Donaghy appeared in a Brooklyn federal court and pled guilty to conspiracy to engage in wire fraud and transmitting wager information through international state commerce. Donaghy was fined $500,000 in order to pay at least $30,000 in restitution. And on June 19, 2008, the NBA actually filed against Donaghy asking for reimbursement for the league for the cost of airfare, meals, complimentary tickets, and other expenses, including uniform. And they claimed that he would owe them back $1.4 million, including over $500,000 in pay and benefits over the 4 seasons where he was gambling on NBA games. Although he wouldn't end up paying that full amount. And on July 29, 2008, Donaghy was sentenced to 15 months in prison, of which he would serve 11 months in prison and would finish the final remaining in a recovery house and be treated for gambling addiction. Now, Donaghy claims that he was actually attacked while he was in prison and threatened by multiple people. But what he did also while he was in prison is he wrote a book called The Blowing Whistle and the Culture and Fraud of the NBA. And on November 4th, 2009, Donaghy was officially released from prison and has released his book and been featured on a documentary film called Dirty Games, The Dark Side of Sports, as well as Netflix's Bad Sport series. And in 2021, Donaghy made his wrestling debut for the Major League Wrestling, becoming what is known as a heel referee. And after this, the NBA looked into restructuring their gambling policies, making it so that any type of gambling was restricted for NBA officials, making the ban on gambling absolute. And they wouldn't announce the referees for the games until 90 minutes before tip-off to reduce the value of the information to gamblers. Like we said before, as in most things in sports, retroactive is how we usually go by things instead of proactive. This was a dark moment in the NBA, but luckily it has not stayed in the NBA as it has continued to grow more and more every single year. I want to thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. If you like this, please reach out to a friend, hit that little share button, and let them know all about the sports history you're learning so they can learn it too. And come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History. And did you catch the answer to today's trivia question? What NBA player actually threatened Tim Donaghy back when he was a ref in the NBA? And that was Rasheed Wallace.